So I'll just list down some of these applications which are a part of the Oracle Pharmaceutical Applications Suite. So the first application is, of course, Oracle Clinical, and this is a clinical data management system. The second application, which is a part of the Oracle Pharmaceutical Applications Suite, is the Oracle AERS, also stands for Oracle Adverse Event Reporting System. It's the safety database where all the adverse events and serious adverse events will be stored, and it can be synchronized with the Oracle Clinical database. The third one is Oracle TMS, which stands for Thesaurus Management System. During the process of collection of clinical data on case report forms, there are a lot of data that's reported which are not standard medical terms. So you have to convert verbatim terms that are reported on the CRF into standard medical terms through by the use of medical dictionaries. And the management of these medical dictionaries and the versions is done by the Oracle Thesaurus Management System. The fourth application is SiteMinder and TrialMinder. So these are two applications installed at the site and with the sponsor respectively. These applications help in the management of administrative data, financial data, and regulatory data generated during clinical trials. And therefore, it's also called the Clinical Trial Management System. It's called the Clinical Trial Management System because it's not used to collect and manage raw clinical data. It is just used to manage administrative and regulatory data as well as financial data, which helps the site and the sponsor keep on top of the clinical trial at any given point of time. So these are the four basic components of Oracle Pharmaceutical Applications Suite. And it depends that some companies might have all the four applications installed as a part of their life science infrastructure. However, some of the companies might only have one of these applications installed. Okay, so the instance that we will be working on is only having Oracle Clinical as the component that's been installed within this particular software. So to access that application, the first step you need to do is get to this login page by using the URL and typing it into the Internet Explorer browser. You then click on the login button and it opens a small window. Now this small window that opens up is helps maintain connectivity between the browser that you're using and the web server, which is actually serving the web application. Oracle Clinical is a web-based application, which essentially means that you access Oracle Clinical over a browser. So you're not using a client-server model here. You don't go into programs, open a program, and then connect to Oracle Clinical. So it's not a client-server model. Instead, it's a web-based model wherein you type in the URL, it connects to a web server which is located on the Oracle Clinical application server that's running, and it helps you connect to the application over a simple browser. Now, to maintain connectivity between the browser and the server that's serving this application, this small window opens up. And if you close this window, you lose connectivity to your server. So you will not be able to perform any activities within Oracle Clinical if you close this small window. So the first step that you need to do is minimize this window and do not close it while you're working on the application. Immediately after that small window opens, the login applet will also open. This login applet will only be shown to you if you have JInitiator installed on your system, because this is a Java applet which allows you to securely log into the Oracle Clinical application. And unless JInitiator, which is a plugin, is installed on your system, you will not be able to get to this point. Okay? So this is why we need to use a 32-bit operating system. Now once you've got to the login screen, you can enter a username and a password, which I will be providing to you in a short while at the end of the session. After the session, I'll be creating your usernames and passwords and sending them across to you in an email. So you'll get a username which starts with OPS $. In Oracle Clinical, all usernames start with OPS $, which is a prefix to tell the database that this is the table that you want to connect to while authenticating this particular user. So OPS $, is always a prefix to the username that's provided to you by Oracle Clinical Administrator. In this case, my username is OPS$trainer. So I'm going to enter that username here, enter the password which I want to use to connect to the database, and then I would like to enter the name of the database that I wish to connect to. Now, companies might be running multiple instances of the same database or multiple instances of various databases, and you would like to choose which database you want to connect to. And sometimes companies run a validation database which is separate from the production database. So they might be running a validation database by the name of OC Validate, wherein this database is just used as a test server for clinical data management professionals to perform various clinical study tasks. And the data within this validation database does not count to be production data, which means it's not going to be submitted to the regulatory authorities. So this is just a playground for the clinical data management professionals to actually go ahead and plan their study and design their study and perform activities just to validate that they're performing the tasks correctly. So not necessarily in a production environment. But there's also a production database then to which you will connect to when you actually want to work on various studies being conducted by the company. Okay, so if you're working on live studies, you'll probably be given access to a separate database where live studies are located, and you'll be working on them. So in this case, the database name that we'll connect to is OCPROD, OCPROD. It stands for the Oracle Clinical Production Database. Now, I will be sending you this information in the email as well. So I'll be sending you the link to login, I'll be sending you the name of the database to login, and I'll be sending you your usernames and passwords as well. Once you've once you've got to this point and you've entered the username, password, and database name, click on Connect, and that connects to your Oracle Clinical application. So what it's trying to do right now is authenticating the username and password against the database that you've entered to connect to. If the authentication is successful because the username and password exists, it will log you into the system. If not, it will just give you an error stating that you are not authorized to log in into the application. This conforms to the 21 CFR Part 11 compliance, which is a regulatory compliance that needs to be adhered to by all IT systems in life sciences. They have to adhere to an FDA guideline called 21 CFR Part 11, and that states that your username, there should be a username and password that should be a window to any clinical data management system, which means that only authorized users should be able to access the application at any given point of time. And a combination of the usernames and passwords of each of those users will be considered as their electronic signatures. Okay, so once you've logged into the Oracle Clinical application, you'll be greeted with this window. If there are multiple applications installed, right now there's only Oracle Clinical installed here, so you'll see Oracle Clinical OCL 4.5.0, that's the version number that we're working on. If there are more applications installed, you'll have more nodes over here, such as Oracle AERS and Oracle TMS and SiteMinder, TrialMinder. So there is only one node here, which means that Oracle Clinical is the only pharmaceutical application that's installed for this instance. Now, this entire window is called the navigation window because it's the home screen of the Oracle Clinical application. In this session, I just intend to take you through the various components of Oracle Clinical and briefly explain you the functionality of each of these subsystems. We'll be going into each subsystem in detail, and so for every session, we'll be proceeding in such a fashion that I'll be telling you about each subsystem, what are the modules within each subsystem, what function it performs. I'll be demonstrating that function to you as it's performed in the industry, and then I'll be giving you an assignment of how you can practice to perform that same function using that subsystem. So it will be divided into three parts: a demonstration, an assignment, and then a feedback, which I'll give you based on the assignment that you've actually completed. So this entire screen is called the navigation window, and the menu that we see here is called the navigation menu. So this set of menu items from admin, plan, design, global library definition, conduct, data entry, and labs, this is called the navigation menu. Okay, the navigation menu is made up of several small nodes, and each of these nodes is called a subsystem. So we've got an administration subsystem, a plan subsystem, a design subsystem, a global library subsystem, definition, conduct, data entry, and labs. So each one of these is called a subsystem in Oracle Clinical. A subsystem has various modules which allow various functions to be performed by that subsystem. Okay. When we click on a specific subsystem in Oracle Clinical, for example, if we click on the plan subsystem, it shows us a bunch of nodes, and each of these nodes is called a module. So you've got a programs module, you've got a query programs module, organizational units module, query organizational units module, regions, plan studies. Each module is used to perform a subset of the function that the subsystem performs. So if plan performs 10 or 15 different functions, the programs module allows 2 or 3 out of those functions to be performed. So it's just a subset of basic functions that can be performed by the subsystem. So the highest in the hierarchy here, and let's note this down for you as well. So we've discussed here that we've got a navigation screen, and this navigation screen is made up of a navigation menu. Navigation menu in turn is made up of subsystems, and subsystems actually help in performing a bunch of functions, a bunch of clinical data management tasks. So that's what the role of a subsystem is. Each subsystem is divided into several modules. So you might have module 1, and you have module 2, and so on. So you can have any number of modules within a subsystem. Each one of these modules is actually used to move the data between the tables of the clinical database. So each module within a subsystem actually helps in the movement of the data between the tables of the clinical database. So for example, the programs module is used to create a therapeutic area. It allows a therapeutic area to be stored within a certain table within the clinical database. And the actual movement of data happens through the module. It does not happen through the subsystem. It does not happen through the form. Okay? So the modules help in the movement of data between the tables of the clinical database. Sometimes a module may be further subdivided into submodules. So submodules also perform the same function as performed by the module, which is that the submodule allows you to move the data between the tables of the clinical database. But not all modules are divided into submodules. For example, here the plan subsystem is divided into the programs module, but the programs module is not further subdivided. However, if I click on the design subsystem, the design subsystem is divided into the studies module, which can further be subdivided into several submodules. So this is the subsystem, design subsystem. Studies is the module, and easy study design is the submodule. Both the module and the submodule help in the movement of data between the tables of the clinical database. So that is the structure of the navigation menu. The navigation menu is made up of several different subsystems, as we can see here. Each subsystem can be expanded to show what is known as a module, which helps in the movement of data between the tables of the clinical database. And every module can also be subdivided into submodules. So some modules can be divided into submodules and some cannot. Okay, just like the programs module cannot be further subdivided, but the studies module can be further subdivided. Do you have any questions up till here? You could ask me now, and I'll answer any questions that you have, and then I'll proceed further. Okay, so move further then. Now we've discussed what a navigation menu is. We've discussed what a navigation screen is, what are modules, and what are submodules. When you click on a module or a submodule, it further opens up what is known as a form. So if I click on a module, clicking on a module will further open up a form. Similarly, if I click on a submodule, it will also open up what is known as a form. So here I'm clicking on the programs module. So when I click on the programs module here, it opens up a form for me. And this form is used to show data which is related to that module. So here the programs module is actually used to create the therapeutic area. We'll discuss about each of these modules as we go through the various sessions. But the programs module is used to create therapeutic areas. So when I open up the programs module, it shows me a form which contains all the therapeutic areas that have previously been created and researched. Okay? So a form is a window which allows you to see the data within the database related to the module that you've opened the form from. So here, this form, maintain programs and projects form, shows me the data related to the therapeutic area because I've opened it by clicking on the programs module. So a form is a user interface which allows you to view the data by fetching it from the clinical database. Please remember that if you perform any actions on this form, the actions are actually being performed by the module. The form is just a dumb interface which allows you to view the data and which allows you to make changes to the data. The changes actually being performed by the module itself. So it's your window to the clinical database. Okay. You will also notice that when a form is closed, and there's a bunch of icons at the top here. These icons are file, edit, navigate, job, window. They don't do much. If you'd like to exit out of the screen, it will allow you to do that. If you like to print this particular screen to a printer, it will allow you to do that. Just basic stuff it allows you to do. Okay. But what is important is that when I actually, I'm just highlighting this particular bar so that you can identify how it changes. Now, if I click on any of the modules and it opens up the form, the navigation bar at the top over here will change. So when I click on the programs module and it opens up the form, you see that this automatically changes to action, move, data, action, move, clear, data, query, special, and help. So these bunch of items at the top here is called the inform menu. So this right here is called the inform menu. So the inform menu is a bunch of actions that you can perform on a given form. So it's a bunch of activities that you can actually perform on a given form. It's called the inform menu because it only opens up when a form opens. The moment I close a form, the inform menu automatically disappears. So if I close this form, the inform menu from the top is going to disappear. If I open a form, the inform menu will appear again. So the inform menu is a bunch of common functions that you can perform on any given form. Action, move, clear, data, query, help, and window, these are buttons of the inform menu that perform the same functions irrespective of which form is opened up. Okay. If I want to clear the record, for example, I'm working on the first record here. If I want to clear the record, I can just click on clear record and it clears that record for me. If I want to clear this first record again, I can do that again. So this function is common for any form that's actually opened up. But there is a function called the special inform menu. The special inform menu varies from, the function of the special inform menu will vary from form to form. Like in this form, it only allows me to select a study. But if I open up another form, let's say I go into the definition subsystem, data collection modules, and I open a data collection module, we will see that the special inform menu will actually change. So here, the special inform menu will be slightly different. If I click on the special inform menu, it will have much more functions that you can actually perform on this form. So the functions that can be performed by the special inform menu are restricted on a form-to-form basis. However, the rest of the functions in the inform menu can be performed irrespective of which form is actually opened up. So again, coming back to our programs form, because that's the simplest form that we work on. So in the programs form, I can use the action inform menu to save a record. I can view the audit information of any record. For example, I'm working on the first record and I'd like to know which user created this record. I can go into action, audit, and it will show me which user actually created this record on what date and time. So this record was created by OPS Trainer, which is me, on 15th of May 2009 at so-and-so time. It was also modified by me on the 17th of May. So it will tell you that for each specific record, it will give you an audit information or a log of who created that record and who modified that record. Similarly, you can use the action inform menu to view the environment that you're working on. So if I click on environment, it will tell me which is the user who's logged into this database at this time, what is the database that you've logged into, what is the current study that you're working on, what is the version number of that study, and other details such as what is the current date, and also it will give you the technical name of the module that you're working on. So in this case, we are working on the programs module, but internally within Oracle Clinical, the programs module is referred to by this name, which is RxAPGMCA. This does not make any difference to the end user who's working on any study. But it's a good to know information in case you're wanting to debug any particular module or send this information to the Oracle Clinical Administrator. So let's say your programs module is not working correctly, and you tell the Oracle Clinical Administrator, you send an email stating that the programs module is not working correctly for you. He might ask you to go into the environment variable and tell the technical name of the module so that he can troubleshoot it at a database level. Okay, so this just gives you more information about the window that you're working on and the current environment of Oracle Clinical that you're working on. You also have an option to run batch jobs. Batch jobs are non-interactive programs in Oracle Clinical which do not interfere with the user's tasks. For example, you'd like to run a report, but you'd also like to keep working on this programs window. You can do that using the batch jobs function. I'll tell you further about what batch jobs are when we go into discrepancy management and validation procedure designing. But at this time, it's good enough to understand that batch jobs are non-interactive programs like running reports or executing validation procedures, which do not interfere with the user's tasks. So they run in the background, and you can get to them if you'd like to by going into batch jobs here, which will show you all the batch jobs being run at any given point of time. Which one's a failure, which one's a success, and you can also view the output of each batch job. Now, apart from that, you can also print the screen if you'd like to, or you can exit this form, and you can also exit this form without saving. Similarly, the move inform menu allows you to move back. So if I'm at the fourth record and I go to move back, it takes me back to the previous screen that I was actually on. So it takes me back to the navigation menu. If I click on the programs module here and I click on move and I go into projects, for example, for any given program, if I go into projects, this is the second level within this screen. So this is something that I didn't tell you when I was telling you about forms, that each form can have multiple levels. Like this is the first level of a form. If I exit out of this level, I actually exit out of the form completely. But within the programs form, I can have multiple levels. So I can have a projects level, like in this form. I can go to the projects level, and this is the second level within this form. If I want to move to the previous level, I can click on back, or I can just go and move back. It takes me to the back, the first level within this form. So the move button in form menu allows you to move to different levels within the form. It also allows you to move between fields. So right now my cursor is on the first field. If I'd like to move to the description field, I can go to move next field. If I'd like to go to the second record, I can go to move next record, and it'll go to the next record right here. So at some times you might want to use these functions. Now clear and delete are two different functions. So if I clear a record, it does not get deleted. So for example, VMS01, this is the therapeutic area for central nervous system. if I clear this record, it does not mean I'm deleting it. Clearing the record means it's removing it from the user interface of the form, but it's still existing within the database. So if I was to go in a query, enter query, and execute the query again and fetch all the records, BMS01 will populate back here. So clearing the record does not mean deleting it. If you'd like to delete a record, you'll have to go into data, delete record. And this will delete the record for good, and you'll not be able to get that information back again. You can also insert a new record. So if I'd like to insert a new record after BMS01, I can go into data, insert record, and it will add a new record right below this. If I want to delete this record, I will delete it. If I want to duplicate a record, I can also do that, and it will duplicate that record and create a new record by the same name. You can use the query inform menu to set various query parameters. Like here, I've got several programs, BMS01, GSK again, and then Eli Lilly. If I only want to query for the BMS01 program, I can go in a query, enter query, and I can do a search by %BMS%, which means that I want to query for all those programs whose code has BMS in it. It could have anything before, which is signified by %. It could have anything after, which is signified by % again. So %BMS% will query for all those records of all those programs which have a code that has BMS somewhere in the code. Okay. If I execute the query this time, it will only fetch me one record, which is BMS01, because this was the only one that contained BMS within the list of values. So you can set different query criteria based on which you can actually query the record. One thing also you'll note is that there's an option for count hits. So in discrepancy management, the number of discrepancies that are fetched are very, very large. So for a study, you might have 3,000 to 4,000 discrepancies that you're working on. You might not want to fetch all the discrepancies at the same time, but you like to know that if you execute a query, how many discrepancies will actually be fetched. So in this case, if I go to enter query, and I would like to know that if I query for this criteria, which is %BMS%, how many discrepancies will actually be, how many records will actually be fetched. I can do that without executing the query and just clicking on count hits. When you click on count hits, it runs a query to the database, giving you the numeric value of the records that will be fetched rather than the records itself. So when you click on count hits, it will tell you at the bottom that query will retrieve one record. So it's not really queried the database for the record, it's queried the database for the number of records that will be fetched for this query criteria. So of course, if you execute this query, only one record gets fetched, which is absolutely what our count hits told us. As I said, the special inform menu is a special set of functions for every given form. In this case, it's only used to select the study. The help inform menu allows you to basically view key definitions. Key definitions are shortcut keys that you can use within Oracle Clinical. And all the shortcut keys that you can use within Oracle Clinical can be viewed under the key definitions module. So there are three ways to perform functions within Oracle Clinical. You can use the inform menu, or you can use this toolbar that you see right below the inform menu, which performs the same functions as the inform menu. So the inform menu and the toolbar perform exactly the same functions. It's just that the toolbar is more intuitive and it will give you tooltips about what function can be performed by it. For example, if I put my cursor on this particular toolbar, just give me a minute. Yeah. So if I put my cursor right here, it will give me a tooltip that this one is actually used. So I'll have to close this form actually. So if I move my cursor here, now it gives me a tooltip that this is for next record. So if you like to move to the next record, you can do that. If I'd like to save a form, I could do that by just clicking on this record. If I'd like to exit a form, I can do it using this. So the toolbar performs the same functions as the inform menu. So the first way to perform functions is using the inform menu. The second way to perform functions is using the toolbar. The third way to perform functions in Oracle Clinical is by using shortcut keys. You can view all the shortcut keys within Oracle Clinical by going into the help menu, key definitions. I'll show you all the shortcut keys. that you can use within Oracle Clinical. So over time, as you're working on the application, you can get acquainted to these shortcut keys and use them. If you have multiple windows open up, you can switch between windows using the window inform menu. So I can go back to my navigator window, or I can go back to my maintain programs and projects form using the window inform menu. Now whenever a form is open, you will also see a bunch of nodes that are displayed on the form. These bunch of nodes that are displayed on the form are called navigation buttons. Okay, navigation buttons are a series of buttons on a form which allows you to perform a certain set of functions within it. So for example, on this form, while I'm creating programs, I can also create projects, and I can assign my investigational drug to a specific therapeutic area. So projects and compounds assigned are two navigation buttons here which allow you to perform relevant functions while creating a therapeutic area. Exit, save, and single are common navigation buttons which are there on every form. So navigation buttons will also vary from form to form. Like here I have the programs and projects form opened up, and it shows me projects and compounds assigned navigation button. But if I exit out of this form and open another form, for example easy study design, it will show me a completely different set of navigation buttons. Here it's got intervals, events, treatments, patient positions. So there are a completely different set of navigation buttons on this form. So navigation buttons allow you to move to different levels of the form and allow you to perform relevant functions in that given form. Okay. Also, when a form is opened up, you will have till now we've discussed what an inform menu is, what a toolbar is, then key definitions, navigation buttons. Other user interface elements within Oracle Clinical are the Windows title bar. So this right here is the Windows title bar at the top. The Windows title bar allows you to see who is the user who's logged into Oracle Clinical, what is the symbolic username, what is the database he's logged into, and what is the date of login. This information is recorded within the audit trail based on any activities that are conducted by the user. So this is called the Windows title bar. It gives you more information about the user logged in, the date he's logged in, and the symbolic username of the user logged in. Then there is the inform menu. So for every form that opens up, you'll see a title that is present for every form. In this case, it's maintain programs and projects. So every form will have a title which displays what that particular form is used to do, and this is called the form title bar. So you've got the Windows title bar at the top, and for every form you've got the form title bar. Then you've got a message line. So if my cursor is placed on the code field, it tells me a unique code for the program. So if my cursor is placed on the description field, it tells me this is a unique description for the program. So this is called the message line. It gives you more information about where your cursor is placed. So if you like to enter a value for a particular field and you're not really sure about what value needs to go in there, you can refer to the message line because it will give you some information as to what information needs to go in there. Right below that is the status line. The status line tells you which record you're working on and how many records are there within that form. So here it says record 1 out of 4 because I'm working on the first record and there are 4 records within this form. If I start working on the 4th record, it'll change and say record 4 out of 4. So this is very important in discrepancy management, where you really need to be sure about which record you're actually working on. And at that stage, the status line will come into use. It tells you which record you're working on, or wherever there is a list of values for a particular field, it'll tell you there is a list of values for it. So this is the user interface of Oracle Clinical. Now, each of these subsystems is used to perform various functions. In our future sessions, we'll be talking about what function is performed by each subsystem. we'll not be doing the administration subsystem because this is used by the Oracle Clinical Administrator, and it's a technical function in sync with the actual Oracle Clinical Backend database. So this is generally a role which is not which is limited to the IT and the administration department. You do not have access to it because that's not involved in the process of planning and designing a clinical study. The lab subsystem is not required here because laboratory information management systems are used specifically for the management of lab data. So the subsystems that we'll be talking about are the plan, design, global library, definition, conduct, and data entry. Overall, the administration subsystem helps in the process of creating new users, changing user passwords, and maintaining the report queues of various reports that are actually run. There are several reports also that you can create using the administration subsystem. For example, you could create administration reports for knowing what are the users that are existing within the application. So if you'd like to know all the users that are existing within the application, you can run a report for groups and users, and it will give you a report as to how many users are there within the application as such. It also is used to set data entry configuration settings for various data entry behaviors while performing data entry from case report forms. So this is mostly to deal with administrative functions of Oracle Clinical. The plan subsystem allows you to plan a clinical study by defining the therapeutic area, the disease, and the investigational or drug that's being used for your specific study. The design subsystem is used to design a clinical study by defining the time periods into which the study is divided. It is here that you will also decide how many visits are there within your clinical study and what are the patient identifiers by which you will refer the patients who will enroll in this clinical study. In the design subsystem, we also define what will be the various treatment arms into which the patients will be divided during the process of conducting the clinical trial. Because in every clinical trial, you need to have at least 2 treatment arms, one being the investigational drug and the other treatment arm being the one who's going to receive the placebo or a control to the investigational drug. So you will need to divide your patient IDs into either one of those treatment arms in such a way that there is no bias in the clinical trial. Okay? And you use the design subsystem to do that as well. The global library and the definition subsystem are actually used to create your data entry screens. So your case report form is used to actually enter the data within the clinical database during data entry. But you cannot enter the data from a CRF into the database till you have data entry screens designed which look exactly like your CRF. And to create those data entry screens from case report forms, you use the global library subsystem and the definition subsystem. The definition subsystem is also used to create validation procedures, which are programs used to identify inconsistent data. So there would be several different discrepancies that will be generated as a part of your data collection process. Some of those discrepancies are due to inconsistencies in the data, wherein a response to one of the questions contradicts to the response to another question that is answered on the same CRF. For example, the investigator might mark the gender of the subject to be male, whereas one of the lab tests that is conducted for the same patient might have pregnancy test marked as positive. So it could be possible that the investigator has actually made a mistake, or the laboratory has actually mixed up the samples. So in either of those cases, you will have to actually query back to the investigator and ask the investigator what exactly is the issue, why that inconsistency has actually occurred. So in those cases, you will need to create automated programs which can run on your data to identify inconsistent scenarios in the data entry. And we will be discussing the process of how we create these validation procedures and how we write Boolean expressions for them to identify inconsistent data. The conduct subsystem is used to manage discrepancies that are generated during the data entry process. So once the data is actually entered by the data entry operator using the data entry subsystem, the conduct subsystem is then used to actually manage discrepancies for incomplete, missing, and inconsistent data. The conduct subsystem is also used to create data clarification forms which actually allow you to send across your discrepancies to the investigator via the data clarification form, through which you can actually query the investigator for a clarification as to why that discrepancy exists and what is the resolution to it. Okay. So as a part of this Oracle Clinical Training, you will get hands-on training exposure to all the subsystems of Oracle Clinical with respect to planning, designing a clinical study, creating case report forms, performing data entry, and managing discrepancies. When you work in the industry, you will not work on all of these subsystems. So you might just work as a database designer where you have access only to the plan and design subsystem. You might work as a CRF designer wherein you only have access to the global library subsystem. Or you might be working as an Oracle Clinical Programmer where you only have access to the definition subsystem because you need to design validation procedures. Or you'll be working as a clinical data coordinator, which will involve the process of using the conduct subsystem to manage the discrepancies and send the discrepancies on data clarification forms. So this completes the overview of Oracle Clinical and the user interface elements of Oracle Clinical. Now, for those of you who are using 32-bit operating systems, I would advise you to please go to the link that you can see on your screen at this time. I'll also be sending you this link when I send you your usernames and passwords a short while from now. And you can use that link to get to this login page and click on Downloads and download JNA Shader. But please try and download and install this JNA Shader before the next session begins, because once the next session begins, I'll be demonstrating the process of planning and designing a clinical study, and you'll have to perform that assignment yourself. So please get set up with the JNA Shader plugin and make sure that you're able to log in into the application once I send you your usernames and passwords. If you're not sure, if there's some question that you'd like to ask, you can always send me an email. I'm typing my email into the chat window here. So you can send me an email here and I'll help you with any doubts that you're facing. But please make sure that before you try installing JNA Shader and trying to get to the login page, you should be able to do it only if you have a 32-bit operating system running on the laptop that you're working on. So that's pretty much it from this session. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, you can ask your questions now. And then we close the session for today, and I'll send you across your usernames and passwords to the application. Do you have any questions? Okay, so that completes our session for today on Oracle Clinical Overview and Navigation. I'll be sending you your usernames and passwords to the application shortly. Thanks for joining the session, and I'll see you in our next session. If you have any doubts along the way, please send me an email on the email ID that I've just typed into the chat window, and I'll help you with any questions that you have with respect to the setup. Thanks for joining this session. Have a good day.
The organizer has ended the session.